This old man spent 40 years mastering lightning magic, only to discover he had zero magical talent. The truth was so devastating, it killed him. But seconds after dying, he was reborn as a 4-year-old. Before he even learned to control his new body, he accidentally one-shot a dragon. Eftel was a middle-aged mage who spent nearly 40 years mastering lightning magic, all for one goal: is to help the hero party defeat the demon lord. Normally, this is where the weakest hero gets betrayed and thrown away, but this story takes a very different turn. But for once, the people of the kingdom were actually grateful for his contribution. As the king thanks the great heroes for ending the demon invasion, he reveals the rewards. As a reward for their bravery, the king announces he will grant them the highest honor the kingdom can possibly bestow: the title of emperor. Eftel is stunned to hear this. The title of emperor is normally reserved for nobles, and even they rarely receive it, so for him to be receiving such a title truly is a great honor. After crowning the water, fire, and earth heroes as emperors, the king calls Eftel forward, and he admits that Eftel isn't the strongest mage out there, but says the hero party never could have won without his help. Then the king names Eftel the 4th emperor. Eftel is happier than ever before because for the first time in 40 years every sacrifice finally feels worth it. Several years pass. Eftel has retired and is living in the countryside, spending most of his days training the young children he has taken in over the years. For today's lesson, Eftel has the kids practice their magic formations while balancing rocks on their heads to help them maintain focus. Some of the children struggle at first, but after hours of practice they finally succeed, and once Eftel is satisfied, he rewards them with a well-earned break. The kids are all exhausted, and Eftel commends them for their hard work. But before they can relax, Eftel tells them it's time to practice their level 4 spells. However, just as Eftel is done saying that, Merlin speaks up and asks Eftel if he's sure he wants to keep going without taking a break for himself first. Eftel realizes Merlin isn't questioning she is worried about him since he is old now, but he just laughed and told her that as long as his knees still listened to him, a little standing wasn't going to wear him out. Eftel recalls the day he first found Merlin. She was the daughter of a demon woman who had gotten caught up in one of his battles. Even though Merlin was a demon, Eftel decided to take her, and since there was no way she'd be able to survive on her own out here, and though Merlin is probably too young to remember any of it, Eftel is sure he must have killed dozens of her family members during the war, so he feels a little guilty when she looks at him with such sincere concern. For now, Eftel decides to carry on with the lesson, and tells everyone to get ready to go over the level 4 spells again. Merlin comes in and asks Eftel if he could actually teach them some level 6 magic today. The other kids stare at Merlin in disbelief because Eftel only taught them level 5 magic yesterday, yet she is already asking for level 6. Eftel is a little confused as well, since he didn't expect that question. Eftel admires her determination, but reminds her that rushing only creates weak foundations and she will learn level 6 magic in due time. For now, Eftel wants her to master the basics first because it's important and the advanced magic will come later. Merlin is a little disappointed to hear him say that since she wanted to learn the magic as quickly as possible. But Merlin accepts his advice and returns to practicing the basics. Later that day, Merlin stands trembling at the edge of a dark forest, terrified. But determined to prove herself, she forces herself to step inside. Merlin plans to kill one of the monsters lurking deep inside the forest so she can prove that she is truly worthy to call herself the best student of the Lightning Emperor. That way, Merlin will be able to take over teaching the other kids, and Eftel won't have to work anymore, so he can finally enjoy his retirement. Merlin knows Eftel would never ask this of her, but Merlin wants to help him anyway. Merlin's heart was in the right place, but her judgment wasn't. Less than 10 minutes later, she is sprinting for her life, trying to escape the forest after running into a wolf monster that shrugs off every level 4 spell she knows. Every spell Merlin throws at the monster either misses or fails to do any meaningful damage, and the wolf keeps charging after her as if nothing happened. Realizing she can't escape from the wolf, Merlin gambles everything on a level 6 spell even though she has barely practiced. Merlin begins the chant for the spell, and although the wolf is still charging at her with deadly intent, Merlin manages to stay focused the entire time and complete the spell, firing off a massive thunderbolt at the wolf. Merlin is extremely relieved that she actually managed to complete the spell, and Merlin is convinced that she successfully beat the wolf, but to her horror, the wolf runs right through the blast without suffering a single scratch and knocks her to the ground. Then it slowly approaches Merlin, but as it is about to eat her, the monster is suddenly struck by a bolt of lightning. The instant Merlin hears the lightning, relief washes over her because she knows only one person could have cast that spell. But that smile quickly fades once Merlin sees how angry Eftel is, since he had specifically warned her not to go into the forest. Merlin shrinks back with guilt and apologizes for her foolishness. Eftel warns Merlin to stop rushing things because unfinished magic isn't true magic, and magic you haven't mastered will always fail you when it matters most. Eftel reminds her that even the most powerful magic becomes useless if the person casting it doesn't properly understand it. While Eftel is in the middle of his speech, the wolf monster suddenly gets back up and appears behind him, but Eftel doesn't even turn around to face it. Eftel just casually tells it not to interrupt while he's in the middle of teaching his student a lesson, and then he hits it with some level 10 magic, incinerating the wolf in an instant. A little while later, Eftel brings Merlin back home. Merlin still can't believe and can't stop thinking about the incredible level 10 spell Eftel unleashed earlier. But before Merlin can say another word, Eftel tells her to get some rest. Merlin agrees, and she is about to get ready for bed, but all of a sudden, Eftel falls to his knees and begins spitting up blood. Merlin rushes over to his side because she's worried about him, and Eftel apologizes for letting her see him like this since he knows she looks up to him. But Merlin reveals that she already knew about Eftel's sickness. Merlin had noticed it a while ago, which is why she was working so hard in hopes of becoming Eftel's successor so he wouldn't have to put so much strain on himself. Realizing his illness pushed Merlin into risking her life in the pursuit of power, Eftel feels deeply ashamed, but Eftel quietly admits he doesn't have much time left. So every remaining day counts. Merlin can't understand why Eftel keeps pushing himself even though he is so sick. Eftel simply says he wants to spend whatever time he has left raising the next generation of mages. There was once a time when Eftel wanted to become the strongest mage of all time, but he had already accepted that that's never going to happen, so Eftel is doing his best to nurture the next generation. Merlin can't understand how someone that powerful could ever call himself a failure. But Eftel knows the truth, and no matter how strong he becomes, he'd never reach the heights of the other emperors. He was always the least talented, and no amount of hard work could ever change that. The very next morning, one of Eftel's students bursts through the door to tell him astonishing news. Apparently, the Flame Emperor just published his research on a method to accurately discern a mage's magical aptitude. Eftel is shocked to hear this and snatches the paper to look at it for himself. And sure enough, the research paper shows the perfect way to test a mage's aptitude. Eftel is impressed that the Flame Emperor was able to come up with something like this because it is a groundbreaking discovery. Unable to resist it, Eftel gathers everyone to test this new method. Moments later, everyone gathers in the lab to perform the aptitude test, and after preparing all the materials that the research set requires, Eftel decides to begin with Merlin's aptitude. To do so, Eftel places 4 strands of her hair in the 4 different test tubes, and after a little while, they all change color, with the blue and green test tubes shining especially brightly. According to the research, the brilliant glow immediately reveals S-rank talent in both water and wind magic. Exactly what everyone expected from someone as gifted as Merlin. As for the duller red and brown vials, they mean she has B and C-rank talent in earth and fire magic. While everyone else is talking about how cool this is, Eftel realizes that this test is indeed 100% accurate, because it matches up perfectly with everything he has seen from Merlin's training since she was a baby. Until now, the only way for mages to discover their talent was after years of training in all forms of magic until a form surpasses the rest. But with this new method could identify a mage's true potential from birth, so they can optimize their training from childhood and become far stronger than ever before. Since this test seems to be the real deal, Eftel says he wants to try it next, and at first, Merlin doesn't see the point in doing so since they already know he is the Thunder Emperor. But Eftel wants to find out if he ever truly had what it takes to become the greatest. Over the years, Eftel has had to work harder than everyone else to keep up with them, and when the test is complete, Eftel finds out why. He never had any magical talent at all. Eftel is left in utter shock because the vials remaining clear mean that there isn't a single shred of magical talent in his body. And at first, Eftel completely rejects the result and assumes he must have made a mistake in the steps for the appraisal. But no matter how many times he tries it, the results remain the same. Eftel is forced to come to terms with the fact that the reason he never reached the heights of the other emperors isn't that he simply didn't try hard enough. It's that he had been forsaken by the spirits altogether. The sense of betrayal Eftel feels is so profound that he ends up suffering a heart attack and falls to the ground. Sometime later, Eftel is bedridden as his condition worsens, and in his final moments, he mourns the dream he chased for 40 years and truly believed hard work could overcome anything, and he would become the greatest mage of all time, only to discover that fate had already decided otherwise. Shortly after, Eftel dies, but upon his death, his reincarnation skill suddenly activates, transporting him to the heavenly realm to meet the goddess of reincarnation. Only then does Eftel remember he even had that skill, and after living more than 50 years in this world he had completely forgotten about it, making his emotional farewell feel almost embarrassing. The goddess of reincarnation welcomes Eftel back since it has been a long time since she last saw him, and says she is very impressed by how far he has managed to get in this life, although his body has no magical talent. But that aside, it's time for Eftel's second reincarnation, so the goddess offers him a cheat skill that doubles his growth rate so that he won't have to suffer in the next life. But Eftel refuses because he believes the knowledge he earned through 40 years of struggle is worth far more than any shortcut. The goddess simply smiles, and that was exactly the answer she expected from Eftel. And with that, she reincarnates him into his new life. The next time Eftel opens his eyes, he finds himself in the body of a young boy who lives with his mother in the countryside. His life here is pretty normal, but as soon as his memories return, Eftel secretly slips away to a nearby shed. The very first thing Eftel does is repeat the magical aptitude test the Flame Emperor invented. Eftel hopes that in this life, he might be born with the good magical talent that allows him to surpass his former self. But to his shock, the test reveals the same result: 0 talent in this life as well. For the first time, Eftel regrets refusing the goddess's cheat skill. With him being completely talentless yet again, Eftel imagines he is going to end up bottlenecking after learning 10th level magic like Eftel did in his last life. But just as despair begins to set in over his mediocre fate, until a dragon suddenly appears overhead, flying straight toward the city. There's a group of knights trying to stop the dragon, so Eftel tries running after them to help. But then he realizes that he's still a 4-year-old here. Eftel probably could have taken that dragon down in an instant if he had been at his peak, but with this toddler body, there's no way he could cast his original 10th level magic. However, just as Eftel is thinking about his spell, his body suddenly begins to react, and the spell that he spent his entire last life developing is accidentally cast, striking the dragon down in one hit. The knights rush toward the fallen dragon's body, and they are completely baffled by how the dragon was taken down. Honestly, no one is more shocked than Eftel because he never imagined he would retain his past life skills in his new body. Eftel thought his second life would be another tragedy. No talent, no cheats, the same fate as before. But seconds later, a spell that once took him 40 years to master erased a dragon in a single hit. If he still has no talent, then where did that power come from?